So we're delighted to have Dr. Norman Wirzba from Duke Divinity School here today as part of the McClendon Scholar in Residence program. As some of you know, and there are many in the church I still have not gotten to know, and I look forward to that as I continue in this work, but that I am a proud graduate of the Duke University Divinity School. You can probably tell from looking at me that I was there considerably ahead of Dr. Wirzba. But I have a Master of Divinity degree from Duke, and it is a wonderful place for theological education, has been for decades. And I was just delighted to have him here. And if you're a North Carolina fan or something, please try to hold that into abeyance. Those who live in North Carolina know what I'm talking about. Dr. Wirzba is Canadian. He grew up in Alberta, Canada. He has attended the undergraduate at the University of Lethbridge in Alberta, in the province of Alberta, Canada. He then went to Yale University School of Divinity and studied religion, got an MA in religion from Yale. He then went to Chicago and got another MA, this time in philosophy, from Loyola University in Chicago, and then completed his PhD in philosophy at Loyola University in Chicago. He has taught at St. Thomas More University in Saskatchewan. He has taught in Kentucky at Georgetown College in Kentucky, and at the Baptist Seminary in Kentucky also. And since 2008, he has been professor of theology and ecology. I wonder how many professors of theology and ecology there are in the United States. My guess is not very many, but it's a wonderful combination of expertise and interest. He's a professor of theology and ecology at the Divinity School, and he has a secondary appointment at Duke as a research professor of theology and ecology with Duke University's Nicholas School of the Environment and Earth Sciences. He is the author of dozens and dozens of published articles and several books, including Making Peace with the Land, God's Call to Reconcile with Creation, The Paradise of God, Renewing Religion in an Ecological Age, and Living the Sabbath, Discovering the Rhythms of Rest and Delight, which Paul mentioned earlier, and we do have some copies of that here if you're interested in that. And most importantly for our work today, he is the author of Food and Faith, a Theology of Eating, which many of you have already read, others have heard about, and we've been having some discussions of in the days leading up to this. One reviewer of Food and Faith, I thought captured the essence of this book very well when she said, "No reader will be able to take a mouthful of food in the same light again after reading this beautifully written and original book." Dr. Wirzba achieves admirably what he sets out to do in the introduction, to challenge our ignorance about what we eat in order to bring his readers to a greater and more profound awareness of creaturely interdependence. Dr. Wirzba is widely sought after as a speaker at universities, seminaries, and congregations around the country and also in Canada, and we're absolutely delighted to have him today. So join me in welcoming Dr. Wirzba.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's so good to see you all on a Saturday morning. The dedication is really serious here. I'm really pleased. There's a lot that we can talk about when we talk about food, and I've met some of you already this morning, and I see that some of you bring some really good points of view to bring to this conversation. So the plan for this morning is that I will say a few things about how food is sort of functioning in our society today. We'll give you a chance to talk about how food has functioned in your own life, right? How it signifies. And then I'm going to talk about some of the theological significance of food. And then we'll have a chance to talk again about what does it mean to speak theologically about food, and why would we even do that? Because when I was first thinking about writing a book about food, I had several friends say, well, why would you do that? Christianity has nothing to do with food. You know, Jesus says in the gospel, don't worry about what you're going to eat, right? So get food out of your head. Huge mistake, I think. So what we want to do is figure out how does theological ways of thinking and speaking and acting about food equip us and challenge us to maybe think about food we eat, think differently about how we raise the food that we produce, how we distribute food, how we prepare and share food, right? All of these things need to be in the conversation. So lots of points of contact, and I want to make sure that you have a chance to raise some of the concerns that you will have. And I'll be putting you at ease right at the start, which is by saying I am not a perfect eater. I wrote the book partly as a way to challenge myself. And so don't feel like you have to be a perfect eater. And please don't feel that you need to set yourself up as the food police. Walking around, you're eating that? You're a wicked person. Right? There's just so much guilt in the world, and we don't need to layer it up even more. But I do hope that we can learn to be a bit merciful with ourselves, with each other, and the food that we eat. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about how food has become a really big deal in our culture. We can attribute it to a variety of things. Some writers in particular who really put food on the national consciousness in their writing. But the fact is, we have real interest in food, I think, because we are the first generation, really, of people who do not have a connection to food production. Most of us, I'm going to wager, buy our food. And you have to appreciate how fundamentally new that is in human history. Right? For the millennia that human beings have been eating, it was simply assumed that you grew your own food or were intimately tied in some way in food's production. And that has all changed so very, very quickly. And that means that we are, for the most part, ignorant about food. We depend upon what other people say and how they package and prepare and provide food for us to have access to food. And what Michael Pollan said, which I think is illuminating, is he says, I had to write a book to find out where my food comes from. I didn't know. And he's not new in this in the last generation, right? Most people still do not have any idea where their food comes from. And I teach a course on food and faith and the life of the church at Duke Divinity School. And one of the things I have students do to start each class is I say, pick some snack, favorite food that you have, and you're going to do a 3-minute presentation on the history of this food. Where did it come from? What's in it? Should we be eating it? And the thing that they tell me when they start the class is, do you know how hard it was to find out where my food comes from? So the food providers that we depend upon, they don't even want you to know, in many instances, where your food's coming from. So it's not just that we are ignorant, but we're also sort of behind a veil, right, of delusion, or behind a veil of marketing to make you believe that the food that you're eating is really happy. And so you got a lot of people who are a little suspicious, they're a little bit worried. There's a lot of anti-corporation, right? Because it's the big bad corporations that are destroying everything. I mean, there's all kinds of sentiments swirling around. And especially when you have young parents who have children and they're starting to think, well, what am I going to feed my kids? Given this climate of suspicion and worry, they want to know, where's their food coming from? And some of them write bestsellers like Jonathan Safran Foer, Eating Animals. It was a revelation to him that animals have to die so you can eat meat. Right? This is kind of ridiculous. People have known that if you eat meat, animals die. And it's not just when you eat meat. When you eat anything, other creatures die. Right? That's a major thing for us to have to think about. But that we can get back to later. Another thing about food that makes it so very, very interesting is that food touches everything. There isn't anything that you talk about in this world that does not, at some point, have a connection to food and eating. Cambridge Dean Ralph Inge says, nature is a conjugation of the verb to eat. Right? Everything that lives by eating. And the way you talk about life, of course, is incredibly diverse, right? You have to think about ecological dimensions, agricultural dimensions, economic, political, social, gender. How do women experience food compared to how men experience food? And how do rich people experience food compared to poor people? How about different ethnic traditions or racial traditions? Why is there soul food connected to a history of slavery? What does that have to say about the ways we think about food, right? So food signifies in so many ways. And the hardest thing for me to do when writing the book was to figure out, how do I not write 6 books and just do 1? Because there's so much in the book that I did that had to be left out. Right? We're talking about trade deals. Right? International trade deals are being written that are going to have huge implications for what you eat. But most people don't know that. Or the Farm Bill. We could spend days talking about the Farm Bill. But it's a food bill, it's an energy bill, it's a health bill, it's all of these things together because food is an incredibly complex reality. Food is also a major identity marker. It's not just that people can buy food based upon the kind of style they want to communicate. And we know that there are certain foods that you eat if you're a hipster. Those are not the foods that you eat if you're living in the inner city. Right? And they are not the foods that you eat if you're part of the elites of our culture. Right? There are different sort of socioeconomic, but also styles that people have that they want to communicate. And they do that through, what brand? Food, or where do you go buy your food, or where do you go eat out, right? These are all ways that we have of communicating to each other who we are. What do we believe? What do we value? What do we think is important? And then, food is also deeply personal. I grew up eating foods of a certain kind and eating them in certain kinds of ways. Right? So the fact that I had brothers that were older and bigger meant that we ate fast. Because if you didn't, it would be gone. And, you know, every table has rules about what you're not to do. And at our house, the rule was no stabbing. Because when you reach, there's lots of forks coming in at the same time. And it's very tempting to see brother reaching for the piece that you want. And to use your fork not as an eating utensil, but as a weapon. Okay, so that's part of my story. And sometimes when the food is really good at my house, my wife will just be looking at me with her jaws open. And she'll say, Norm, Dave and Sam aren't here. It's okay. Right? That's part of my narrative. It's part of my experience of food. You all have your own. Right? What if you have all sorts of food allergies? Right? Or what if your major concern is your own appearance, your own weight? And so you've got this love-hate relationship with food because you know food is making you fat. And I don't want to be fat. And so I should be hating food. Or maybe you've had an experience where you've eaten something that nearly killed you. Right? Food is delicious, but you have to be smart because you can eat things that will kill you. Right? So there are all these different sort of histories and stories and ideologies and economic practices and marketing programs that are coming at you, trying to tell you who you are as an eater and what you should be eating, how you should be eating it, who you should be eating it with. So what we want to do now is take a little bit of time for you at tables to talk with each other a little bit about those food histories that you have. How does food signify in your mind? Is food something that you just unqualifiedly love? Are there things about food that you think we're not talking about in our culture because they're not attending to your own experience? Right? These are things that we want to have you have a chance to talk about at your table. And then we'll bring some of those to the table, to the whole group, so that we can see where you're coming from. All right? So let's take some time now and talk about some of the histories that you all bring to this conversation. What you see is important